At a time when technology has become the defining paradigm of the 21st century, India's ongoing data protection regulation underscores the nation's focus on building a strong data privacy regime, and the release of DPDP rules on 13th November 25 marks a pivotal moment in this journey. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Analytics Insight podcast, where we talk about the ever evolving tech space. And I'm your host, Priya Dayalani. Now, the enactment of the Digital Personal Data Protection Act 2023 marks a paradigm shift in India's digital landscape. This landmark legislation enshrines the fundamental right to privacy and establishes a comprehensive principle based legal framework governing the processing of digital personal data. More than just a compliance mandate, the Act is a constitutional recognition of citizen sovereignty over personal information, compelling organizations to fundamentally redesign their data handling practices. Let's welcome Abhinav Parashar, co founder and CEO Digio, to understand why India's Privacy Act was needed, how it will affect consumers, business, and how fintechs can prepare for this shift. Hi, Abhinav. Welcome to our podcast.
Hi Priya, thank you for having me on the platform. Look forward to having a very insightful conversation.
Likewise, Abhinav, we are really glad to firstly, the DPDP Act has been pretty much revolutionary till date. And with you today on a podcast, we will uncover more insights around the Act and, what are certain things we need to keep in mind while getting ourselves or our businesses aligned with the rules. So, without wasting much time, let's start by setting the foundation and helping our listeners understand more about the company Digio, its specialization. And along with that, we would also like to know more about you, Abhinav. How has your journey been till date? Or what triggered your interest towards Digio? And currently, what are certain things you look at the company, like your role towards the company today?
Sure. So let me introduce Digio to our audience first. So Digio is a 10 years old company now. We founded it 2016, me and my other co-founder Sanket Nayak. When we started back in 2016, the intent was to bring or build the foundation of a transparent and smooth digital economy. For a digital economy to happen, every digital transaction requires a trust. It could be your onboarding, your identity verification, your document signing in a legal way, your movement of money, or your protecting users' data. So, Digio now has evolved into a plug and play operating system which handles the user life cycle on any platform, which is say non-core to the company. Say your identity verification, signing, payments, your consent management, account aggregator, your AML checks, right? So these are some examples which is widely being used across the ecosystem from Digio. Before starting Digio, I was part of Flipkart. I my technical background is software engineering, and I was working with the supply chain group of Flipkart and was building large scale software which was being used across the company, and that had set foundation for multiple pieces which are being used even now. And that those learnings I carried, how to build a national scale system, how to handle massive data, and my intent was to do something which is really beneficial for the ecosystem. So I carried my technical learnings and the intent to uplift the ecosystem, and it cannot be done without going digital. That's how my interest towards in this direction came, and I got in touch with Nandan Nilikani back in 2015. He was presenting about India stack and what kind of things will happen in the future. I got in touch with multiple people from India Stack team, and we rolled out a digital signing platform as a first piece, and the platform kept evolving over the period. So now, like as a title co-founder and CEO of the company, I look at the overall direction of the company, the product development, the finance, the people practices, and the strategy part of the company.
Thank you for that overview, Abhinav. And I particularly find it interesting how the company is contributing towards the entire data privacy landscape, because that's something we'll see that will reshape industries globally today. So, building on that foundation, let's dive a little deeper into the broader landscape and understand how these shifts are impacting the industry as a whole. As it is aptly said that data is the new oil, so it is very important to secure and manage the large volumes of data that are being processed in the country daily. After the COVID-19 pandemic, not only the business and corporate world, but also the states itself shifted to digital databases to securely work in these changing times. Now, a country's progress and individuals' right can be balanced by implementing rules and regulations governing the conflicting interests and declining the extent and nature of the use of digital personal data of an individual, which an enterprise or the state can do. Now, due to the huge multifaceted impact of digital shifting and high risk factors, along with the growing dependence on AI technologies, the government then finally passed the DPDP Act in 2023, which addresses all the concerns related to digital personal data privacy. Now, if you look at India, India has long been a data rich economy, but lacked a comprehensive privacy framework. So, with the emergence or with the launch of the DPDP Act, what structural gaps led to the emergence of this act? What structural gaps this the act is aiming to cover?
Sure, Priya. So, for our audience, let's simplify DPDP a bit first. What it does to a common user's life. We receive 5 different marketing calls from different entities in a day. We don't have any control on that. We have never given our phone number to those platforms, but still we receive those phone calls. Now, DPDP puts a control on such kind of data uses, which are not really intended from the user side, right? Now, let's go back in time. And look at the events that happens which led the DPDP rules to be there in place. The digital economy post the internet was easily accessible thanks to entities like Reliance. The digital service delivery boomed in last 10 to 15 years. The e-commerce did not exist earlier. Now it's a part of daily life. So the digital economy kept booming without any policing around how to use the data. If you are getting somebody's phone number, can you call them and sell something else? So there was no rules around that. So back in 2017, when Puttaswamy judgment was passed, where it was said privacy is a fundamental right. So in using that 2018, the first draft of Digital Protection and Data Protection Act was passed, but it was too complex to implement. Multiple startup business model could have been killed with that, and it was really a burdensome. So in 2022, that was cancelled, and in 2023, the DPDP Act was rolled out. And using the act, the DPDP rules were passed in November 2025. So we have highways like Aadhaar and UPI, where business models and business were evolving like at very high speed, and we were policing around those kind of highways with decades old ITX which were created in year 2000, right? So definitely there would be gaps. So DPDP brings bit of, think of it like civilization coming to the society of human being, which where it was Western wild. So that kind of change is happening, and it used to be like if something is free, they say you are the product. The consumer becomes the product. That's how the multiple business models evolved, because ads were being shown to the user. That's how the money was being made, while the core offering was free, right? So these kind of uncontrolled businesses or the usage of data will stop. DPDP gives control back to the user, and it balances between the rights of a business and the consumers.
Thank you, Abhinav, for that overview. And I think as India moved towards becoming a digital first economy with initiatives like Digital India, and we have like fintech expansion and large scale data driven governance, the need for a structured and principle based privacy framework became impossible to ignore. So, the DPDP Act, in many ways, feels like both a response to these long-standing gaps and also foundation for the next phase of India's digital journey, where we can ensure that growth is balanced with accountability and data is not treated like just an asset but as something that fundamentally belongs to the individual. Now, building on that, I think, like I mentioned, the DPDP is an elaborative effort of the Indian legislature to protect the privacy of an individual in a world where individuals' personal data is floated digitally for innumerable reasons. Now, the main idea of the act comes from the data privacy regulation of the European Union, which we all know is the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation. But rather than being perspective and extensive, it is concise and comprehensive draft that incorporates most of the concerns around the data protection regime in India. Now, the current draft proposes very pragmatic and a thoughtful step taken to establish the data protection regime in India by keeping in mind the rights and concern of the people of India along with the globalization goals of the economy. So, is the DPDP Act primarily a consumer protection law, a business compliance framework, or a foundation, like you mentioned, for the next phase of India's digital economy? How should we look at the Act today?
I think it's all three. It definitely is a bedrock for India's next digital phase. While it does involve, gives control to the consumers, and while it brings some bit of compliance burden to the businesses, but this is a ecosystem level shift where the trust used to be a one way, where say you are onboarding a customer, the customer used to get verified. But was there any verification, trust verification on the business? As a consumer, can I ask the business, can you really protect my data? So it did not exist earlier. Now it's moving towards a two-way trust. And when there is a mutual trust, the economy automatically evolves. The right fundamental business models evolve. If, say, some business models are evolving over misuse of the data, you're training your data models using unconsented information, sooner or later regulators will have to stop that. So it creates a clear path for the businesses to move forward, and it do opens global opportunities where the foreign, it could be an investor, it could be other business, can really trust the Indian entities, how the data is being used, are there right protection in place. And AI and SaaS is the future, and in India, if really wants to become the leader, this is the basic hygiene that has to be in place, I believe.
Yeah, definitely, Abhinav. And I think, the act is not just confined to a single lens. Yes, it strengthens consumer rights. Yes, it also introduces clear compliance expectations for businesses. But more importantly, it seems to be laying the groundwork for something much larger. And I think that's when it's quietly becoming an enabler of trust in the digital ecosystem. And trust, as we know, is the currency of the digital economy. Without it, scales become how do you scale your business? It becomes difficult. The adoption can slow down, and the innovation can also hit a ceiling. And I think the real question going forward is not just organization, how they comply with the DPDP, but how they strategically align with it to build more responsible, resilient, and user centric digital experiences. And I think that's where the conversation gets even more interesting. This is because when we talk about tech platforms, e-commerce entities or even digital service providers, they will need to completely redesign their onboarding flows and consent mechanisms. The current practice of presenting comprehensive terms of service documents will no longer suffice. All organizations will have to develop a modular or a contextual notice systems that present the relevant information at the point of data collection. So, this likely necessitates the significant UX UI redesign, particularly for mobile apps where screen real estate is limited. And on the other hand, financial services or healthcare providers, which collect extensive personal data, particularly will face complex challenges in presenting itemized descriptions without overwhelming users. So, from a citizen's perspective, how does the DPDP Act reshape the relationship between individuals and the companies that collect their data?
Yeah, very interesting pointer. Like when we think about how the industry has been functioning so far and how the future would look like, you, and all of even our audience might have always thought about it. When you are getting onboarded on a platform, there will be a very lengthy terms and conditions, and we think about, do anybody even read it? And you check the tick box and you move ahead, and there you don't even know what you are agreeing to. So fundamentally we always question, is it even right? Now in DPDP that would not be possible anymore. You have to have clear consents, you have to have decoupled consents, unambiguous consents, right? So the right way would be, rather than collecting everything in the beginning, you have to collect what you need at this moment. And if say a user is subscribing for more services, only then collect those kind of consent, right? And it used to be a data subject earlier, like, and the end user, it's moving towards, they're becoming data principal, they are the actual owner of the data. So you cannot simply use the information the way you want. You can use only for the purpose the consent is given for. So you have to provide your options to the user to erase the rights they have given to you, to modify the rights, modify the erase the data basically. So you have to really revamp your existing architecture if it's not supporting it. So definitely it's going to be a big overhaul if the systems are not built in a right way. And businesses would have to treat the user data as a borrowed asset, not like as an owner of the data. They have to maintain their fiduciary duties, and there are high penalties if the powers of user are not entertained. So this whole relationship between the individual and the company is set to change compared to what it used to be earlier.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, Abhinav, because with the emergence of the act, it kind of introduces a new level of accountability for companies. They can't just rely on vague consent or buried terms anymore. They are expected to be transparent, responsible, and responsive to user concerns. That, in many ways, builds a foundation of trust, which is becoming increasingly important in today's digital world. So I think overall it feels like a step towards a more balanced and a respectful digital relationship between individuals and organizations. Moving ahead, of course, compliance, when we talk about regulations and compliance. So, for the longest time, I think organizations have struggled in terms of ensuring compliance and also ensuring governance. But recent research estimates that 65% of today's leading organizations have formalized data operations in place focused on driving business and financial outcomes through better use of corporate data. Now, many of these organizations are using data governance as a fundamental pillar to support that goal, while others have data governance programs that have lost direction, been put on the shelf, or simply haven't been introduced as a formalized capability to support the vision. Now, wherever an organization may fall on their data governance journey, these activities, governance activities, are business led and technology enabled through descriptive and intentional project plans that are eventually tied to business outcomes and value generation at every turn. So, from your point of view, do you see data governance and privacy infrastructure becoming a competitive advantage for companies?
Oh, yes, 100%. Now look at today's user, like even our own behavior as a end consumer. If we look at any applications which are seeking permissions unnecessarily, we tend to decline or move to another app. That has become the common user behavior. So if your business model is having privacy as a design, definitely the acceptance from the consumer side is going to be better. Even in our case, like today, we cannot even apply to RFPs if we don't qualify for those privacy practices. And the user behavior is, once a platform start attracting a user base, it keeps increasing, because once you have given a good experience to the user, they'll come back. If it's a bad user experience, you tend to move to something else. So that competitive advantage would always be there. It's already there if the privacy is inbuilt into your flows. And the privacy first brands will win the highest value and most loyal customers. Even your data would be much cleaner, already consented. So your, in the AI world, your models are going to be, regulatory supported. If you're training your data models with scraped data or unconsented data, you have to sooner or later stop that. So when you look at the competition, they'll be focused on their core, rather somebody who's dealing with the legal hurdles when they're not having privacy as design inbuilt today. So yes, I 100% agree that it's going to be a competitive advantage who have privacy, have a design inbuilt into their flows.
Definitely, Abhinav. And I think this is where forward thinking companies are really differentiating themselves, not just by how much data they have, by how responsibly and intelligently they use it. It will be interesting to see how this evolves, especially with increasing global regulations and the growing demand for ethical AI. But one more thing that makes forward thinking companies different is how they ensure privacy by design. Now, privacy is no longer just a regulatory box to check. It's a defining feature of modern digital experiences. As tech becomes more embedded in our daily lives, users expect more than just functional systems. They demand trust, security, and respect for their personal data. And that's where privacy by design comes in, transforming the way companies build and maintain digital products. Where from initial design to deployment, privacy by design shifts data protection from a compliance afterthought to a core organizational value. So, looking at 5 years, will organizations that embed privacy by design can be significantly better positioned in the digital economy, Abhinav?
Uh, yes, as the example of AI I took, the future is AI, and if your data is clean, if it's well consented, you'll be ahead in the game. Otherwise, you'll be in the loop of fixing your tech debts, fixing your infrastructure later on in terms of, say, you have to support data erasure, you have to support modification of the uses of the data. So definitely the entities will be ahead 5 years who have the privacy by design. And I think it will become a norm, even when, say, investors are looking to invest in the companies, and the global entities looking to do business with Indian entities. So it will become a default hygiene check for them as well when they look at getting into a relationship with any of the Indian entities. So the entities who have embedded privacy by design will be definitely better positioned in the digital economy.
Yes, Abhinav, and I think embedding privacy by design, I think it's also very important considering the how it helps into a value creation engine. I think that once organizations embed that or follow this approach, they aren't just avoiding risk or any complications regarding data privacy, but they're also trying to ensure that the relationship with the customers or the end users is eventually frictionless. And I think that's very much important in the digital economy, considering how the expectations are evolving. And I mean, we all know the current expectations of consumers are pretty much high. And I think taking into considering the compliance and regulations, it's important that, how quickly and how deeply we can integrate privacy by design across the entire digital ecosystem. Great, Abhinav. So I think gone are the days when personal data was collected and hoarded with little to no safeguards, just in case we need it someday attitude. Regulations are getting tighter, but more importantly, we are all slowly realizing the strategic aspect of personal data, which in an age of a polarization, even in the tech world, may not be a bad thing. I think the DPDP Act is not just a law, it's a blueprint for a trust driven and an innovation led digital future. And again, privacy by design is more than just a regulatory requirement, it's a fundamental shift in how organizations build, deploy, and maintain technology. And as the digital landscape evolves, ensuring privacy to be embedded in the early implementation stage is very essential. Well, thank you so much, Abhinav, for taking out your time and effort to be on our podcast today and helping us understand about the DPDP Act, how it is changing the relationship between individuals and organizations processing personal data. I think by embracing its principles, organizations can go beyond compliance to deliver superior customer experiences, foster a culture of responsibility, and position themselves as global leaders in the ethical data usage. And in doing so, India will not only safeguard individual rights, but also accelerate its journey towards becoming a privacy first digital powerhouse. Thank you so much, Abhinav, for your insights. It was lovely chatting with you.
Thank you, Priya, and I hope these insights would be useful for our audience. And this is a very right step for the overall digital ecosystem. And we, as Digio, are looking forward to it and very excited to shape the country's implementation of DPDP by its own offerings. Thank you, Priya. Thanks for having me on the platform.
Thank you so much, Abhinav. So, this is for our listeners. I hope you enjoyed today's discussion around the DPDP Act, its implications, how the rules reflect a sophisticated understanding of modern data practices, and how we can ensure a future that can accommodate innovation but also ensure respect to the privacy of users as well. Stay tuned for upcoming episodes, and you can view all our previous episodes on Spotify and other leading platforms. Thank you so much.